She sets an empty plate on the table and watches it like it might answer. The kitchen holds thin light and a floor worn by boots. The wall clock ticks above the doorway, a tarnished badge hanging from its nail. She places a single crust on the plate, breaks it in half, and pushes both pieces away. Her stomach answers. Her late husband's family stands in the doorway, like part of the frame. Dead don't grieve, the brother-in-law says. Neither does hunger, she says. He smiles without warmth. You had months, I had days, she says. They ended. The father-in-law keeps his hat low. Land notes do. I know, she says. You'll pack by sundown, the brother says. We'll take the key. I never had a key, she says. Only a door that sticks. He nods at the plate. Eat if you must. Count stays the same. I choose not to, she says. The fridge clicks. The badge on the clock ticks with the hands. Nobody touches it. Her husband hung it there the night before he left and did not return. The men say he ran. The men say the law got tired. The house remembers more than men. You owe fence, the father says, and the votes he promised. I owe no man a vote, she says. You owe us cattle, the brother says. 2 bulls gone. You took them before the posts fell, she says. Careful, he says. A widow's mouth draws flies or bullets. I've had both, she says. He taps the plate. You want a living man, not a ghost on tin. She looks at the crust, not the badge. She picks up an envelope from beside the sugar jar, folds it once, and slips it into the pocket sewn inside her dress. Do not open unless you're ready to burn. Paper warms against her ribs. You hiding letters? The brother asks. I'm keeping heat, she says. The father studies the clock like it owes him. Your husband owed work, he says. He owed himself a life, she says. He owed me respect, the brother says. Respect isn't offense, she says. Silence settles. She divides the crust again, making 4 small corners she does not eat. Outside, a truck rattles past and fades. She washes her hands for the sound of water and dries them on her skirt. A knock comes. Spurs pause. The men go still. Don't, the brother says. We're hungry, she says. She slides the chain and opens the door a hand's width. A stranger stands with sun at his back and dust on his hat. Name's Cole, he says. I'm here for land and truth. We've got dust and lies, she says. He looks past her at the room and the men. Then I walked right. In-law, the brother says. Leave, not while she's starving, Cole says. Who sent you? The father asks. Same as always, Cole says. Time and men. You buying? The brother asks. I'm counting, Cole says. Fences, cattle, names. Counting without a badge is trespass, the father says. I didn't bring one. Cole says. The law's dead, the brother says. Maybe asleep, Cole says. Why my door? She asks. Because you said an empty plate, he says. Empty plates don't lie. You don't know me, she says. I know the shape of hungry, he says. The brother snorts. Poet drifter, ledger drifter, Cole says. Numbers add, or they don't. This is family, the father says. She's family until she isn't. Cole says. Watch your mouth. The brother says. She steps between them and the table. What do you need? Permission, Cole says. And a place to start. Start with the gate, she says. Start with the night, they said. He ran. He did run, the brother says. He was chased, she says. He was pushed, Cole says. No one proves that, the father says. No one tried, she says. Cole holds her eyes for a beat that warms like a match. He turns to the men. I'll see you before sundown. You won't see the sun, the brother says. You'll see your reflection in it. Cole says. The father lifts his chin. House is ours by dark. Bring a warrant, she says, or a story worth hearing. The brother shifts his weight. You step off this porch. You step onto our say-so. I step onto dirt, Cole says. Dirt doesn't lie for anyone. You'll find boots, the father says. Plenty walked that night. I'll find which boots didn't sink where they should, Cole says. I'll find rope burn on posts and fresh cuts on old wire. She hears the word rope and thinks of the well by the barn, the knot that slips if you don't watch it. You'll need water, she says. I'll take a tin cup, Cole says. You'll take a broken jaw if you keep talking, the brother says. Then break it, Cole says, calm. See if silence feeds you. The brother doesn't move. The father does not blink. The kitchen seems to lean closer to hear what happens next. No one speaks. The badge ticks. The plate waits. She opens the door wider. The letter presses heat into her skin. Cole does not move. The doorframe shadow stretches across her feet. A promise hangs in the doorway like a storm not yet named. Now the doorframe shadow widens. Cut on her eyes, meeting his. Their eyes meet, and the room forgets to breathe. She keeps one hand on the door, the other low at her side, the letter warm where the seam of her dress crosses her ribs. The badge inside the clock ticks, steady as a drip, in a deep place. The brother-in-law leans like he owns the wall. The father stands with his hat fixed like law. Cole steps to the table and sets a wrapped loaf there. Careful as a man laying down a tool he means to use again. Nothing's free, she says. Protection isn't, he answers. Dignity is. The sister-in-law slips into the kitchen with a thin smile. He wants the pasture, she says. That's why he's here. Cole doesn't look at her. I want what was promised to her. The brother snorts. Nothing was promised to a widow who won't sign. Cole glances at the clock. Promises live where memory does. She touches her ring box. It is empty and light, a square that used to mean wait. A winter shard pushes up, his breath at her ear, low and tired. Don't trust a badge with clean hands. The badge flashes like it heard its name. The floor feels bowed, as if holding a trapped thing that scratches without sound. You owe us rent, the brother says. I paid with my bones, she answers. Post by post, winter by winter. Bones don't count, he says. Paper does. Paper burns, she says. The father shifts his boots so the boards will remember. You're on our plank, he tells Cole. Step off it. I'm on her floor, Cole says. I'm offering what you wouldn't. What's your offer? The sister-in-law asks, eyes on the loaf. Work, Cole says to the woman. Fair wage. Your land stays yours. My land's a rumor, she says. Then we make the rumor true, he says. The brother looks from face to face like he's counting bullets. He's selling fog. He's buying time, the father says. Our time. She fixes on the twine knot. Hunger is a dog you don't call by name. Charity is a chain, she says. So is debt, the sister-in-law says. Cole unwraps the loaf and folds the paper flat, like a statement, then cuts the warm body clean and turns the blade away. A start, not pity, he says. You take half. I leave half. You owe me nothing but the truth when I ask it. The father laughs once. Truth is what a man with men says it is. Truth is what stays when men leave, Cole says. The scratch in the room rises again, like claws under boards. She sees boots on the porch, rope bright with moon, water slapped into hush, the silence that pressed across her mouth and learned her shape. She swallows and keeps her face still. The sister-in-law tips her chin at Cole. Say it plain. You want the pasture? I want the fence you broke mended. Her well kept clean, the road open, and her name back on her gate. He says, her name is ours, the father says. It was, she says. It isn't. You'll take our offer, the brother says. 2 weeks roof. We forgive a month if you sign the pasture for summer and lend the well. She lends nothing, Cole says. She lends peace, the father says. Men need water. She needs water, Cole says. and peace that isn't stolen with a smile. She looks at the bread and does not touch it yet. You hire me and you paint a target on my back, she tells Cole. The target's already there, he says. I'm offering a wage and a witness. Witness without a badge is wind, the brother says. Badges lie, Cole says. Numbers don't. Numbers can be stolen, she says. Then we copy them twice and stick one in your stove, he says. That draws a sound from her, not quite a laugh, but it moves the air. She opens the high cabinet, wraps half the loaf in a clean cloth, and sets it on the back shelf where mice forget the path. The second half stays on the table, cut face up like a question she refuses to answer. Her hands shake once and stop. I'm not taking your chain, she tells the father, and I'm not taking his mercy. It ain't mercy, Cole says. It's a job. It's a door, the sister-in-law says. Men like him build doors when they want your house. Men like you take windows first, the woman says. The brother lifts his belt so the leather shows. You work for him, you work against us. I never worked for you, she says. I worked for air. You breathed our air, he says. You left my mattresses in sleet, she says. Silence lays a wet palm across the room. The badge ticks like a small cough. One day, Cole says, sunup, ditch by the south culvert. We'll see what their runoff stole. I'll mark ours. I'll pay cash at sundown. Your land stays in your name. My land stays in their mouth, she says. Until your count shuts it, he says. Let the numbers do the talking. The father sets his hat harder. 2 weeks, he says. Then we come with paper. You'll come with hunger, she says. We'll come with men, the brother says. Bring everyone, Cole says. We'll still be counting. The sister-in-law taps the doorframe as if blessing a game. Don't eat too slow, she says. Bread turns on the tongue when you think too much. I'll think with a shovel, the woman says. They move for the door with the slow pride men use when they want the floor to thank them. She does not thank them. The screen slaps and holds. The engines fade. She slides the bolt. Cole stands easy, hands open, eyes steady. He nods at the untouched half. Leave it, he says. Let hunger learn its place. Hunger's loud, she says. So am I, he says. She puts her palm on the badge below the clock and feels nothing, which is something. The letter sits hot in her dress like a coal. She will not drop. You said dignity is free, she says. It is, he answers. But it costs, she says. It costs refusal, he says. And refusal costs friends. I lost those already, she says. Then you're paid up, he says. She runs the tap, shuts it, listens to the pipes calm. If I work the day, she asks, will the count be fair? I count slow and speak totals out loud, he says. You keep the book. I sign every line. You talk like a preacher who quit church, she says. I quit rooms where men talk over women, he says. That gets her to look at him full. Sunup, she says. One day. No promise after. Sunup, he says, and tips his hat like truth has weight. He steps to the door, but stops in the band of light across the floor. They'll come back, he says. They always do. I know, she says. So do I, he says. She lifts the untouched half, feels its warmth, and sets it down again. She tucks the knife into the drawer, closes it, opens it, closes it once more because her hands need to finish a thing. Go on, she says. I have to sit with the room. Cole nods and steps out, the screen-sized dot. She stands with the clock, the cut loaf, and the scratch in the walls that used to be his breath. The house is memory and weight. She pulls a chair and does not sit. She opens the cabinet and touches the wrapped half, like it might speak. She leaves the other half on the table, a line she will not cross tonight. Night leans in. The badge ticks. The letter burns, and will not cool. The untouched half of bread waits on the table, like a test she refuses to take. She stands between the chair and the drawer where the knife sleeps, feeling the letter warm against her ribs and the clock's slow tick under the tired badge. Cole holds the doorway. Boots scrape the porch and the screen sighs. The sheriff walks in without asking. He lifts the bread, breaks it with 2 neat turns of his hands, and offers half toward her. She doesn't move. Blessings taste better shared, he says. So does power, she says. The brother-in-law drifts in behind him with the sister-in-law on his elbow. The father follows, hat low and polite. The kitchen narrows around the table. Cole takes 1 step, enough to show he won't yield the frame. Her deed, he asks. The sheriff dusts his fingers and slips the crumbs into his pocket. Misplaced, he says. Paper blows. She keeps her voice quiet, but hard. Paper doesn't blow uphill. Storms don't ask, he says. Neither do thieves, she says. We hold it safe, the brother says. Safe means locked from her, Cole answers. The father studies the clock. The sheriff steps under it and taps the badge that hangs beneath, friendly, like greeting a house pet. No trouble, he says. We're here to keep the peace. She hears the whisper she can't put down. Don't trust a badge with clean hands, and keeps her face still. You logged my husband's accident, she says. His mouth shapes regret. Unfortunate, he says. Convenient, she answers. Cole doesn't raise his voice. I asked about paper. The sheriff pats the thin book in his vest. Paper keeps a town standing. Paper pushed him off it, she says. The tap turns, and the pipes rattle. Hear that? House loves order, the brother says. House loves heat and food, she says. Order never fed me. Her deed, Cole says again. Misplaced turned to missing. Missing turns to memory, the sheriff says. Memory turns to lies if men get paid, she says. He flips the book open and writes her name with a neat hand, then draws a thin line under it. She watches the pencil move and thinks of a rope slipping through a wet hand. The broken bread rests on the table, 1 half waiting, 1 half pocketed by a man who calls it peace. What are you logging? She asks. Visits, he says. Offers threats, Cole says. Notes, the sheriff says. You logged my husband's accident, she says again. Unfortunate, he repeats. Convenient, she says. Lower. The father sets his hat on the table. We offer pasture through summer. She keeps a roof. Boys help with fence. We call it square. You call it yours, she says. You don't have a deed, the brother says. She has the land, Cole says, and the land has her. The sister-in-law studies Cole. He wants the pasture. I want what was promised to her, Cole says. Nothing was promised, the father says. Everything was promised, she says. Fence work, cattle, a vote that wasn't his to spend. The sheriff raises 2 fingers and wins silence. Let's be fair, he says. Ranchers come and go. Not this one, Cole says. The words change the shape of the room. She points at the book. Write this, she says. He didn't run. I write what I can prove, the sheriff says. You wrote accident before you proved a body, she says. The father turns his hat and holds it tight. Proof sits under nails and a long wire, Cole says. We'll bring it in daylight. The sheriff nods and draws another tidy mark, a seal under the line that holds her name down. Be civil, he says. Peace keeps better that way. Peace keeps better when you stop stealing, she says. He smiles like the word stealing is a hymn. He tips his hat to Cole. Good day, rancher. Good day, sheriff, Cole answers. We'll look for paper, the sheriff adds. We'll find truth, Cole says. Truth likes company, the sheriff says. So does power, she says again. They move out the way they came. The brother last, sending a look like a hook he hopes will catch. The screen sighs shut. She stands with the table and the thin air, with the half-loaf that waits like a fact no one can bless for her. Cole sets his palm near the plate, not touching. One day, he says. Then words meet posts. She feels the letter heat again. Sun up, she says. South Culvert. I'll count slow, he says. You keep the book. You talk like a preacher who left church, she says. I left rooms where men talk over women, he says. They'll test how far I bend, she says. Stand, he says. Or snap, she says. Stand with me, he says. She nods. Stand with facts. Facts and cash, he says. Not pity. She looks at the crumbs the sheriff kept. Nothing's free. Dignity is, he says. He goes. The clock keeps its tired song and the badge under it refuses to shine. The thin line under her name keeps writing itself in her head until it looks like a fence across her door. She hides the wrapped half beside the salt and leaves the other where the sheriff broke it. She will eat when the counting starts. Until then the house listens, the well holds its cold, and a widow measures the distance between law and leverage by the space of a doorframe and a single stubborn piece of bread. Now, the thin line under her name won't leave her head. It crawls out of the sheriff's little book and stretches across the kitchen like a wire you could cut yourself on. She stares until it stops pretending to be anything but a fence. The house holds its breath. The badge under the clock stays dull. She slips the wrapped half of bread into the cabinet, leaves the other where he broke it, and takes the cord looped on a nail by the door. Cole waits beneath the porch eave, hat low, eyes reading the yard. He sees the cord and the way her hands hold it. He doesn't speak. She steps past him. The floor answers her boots like it knows her weight. The air smells of dust and old pears and the metal taste of water that hasn't seen sun in months. She moves like she's been meaning to do this since morning and every morning before it. Cole falls in beside her because he knows when silence is the right shape. Outside, the yard is hard-packed. The well sits by the dead pear tree, ringed with stone that remembers too much. She feels the letter burning under her dress seam and presses it flat. She threads the cord through the iron ring, ties a square knot, neat and sure, and leans over the circle. You still there? She asks. The well gives only wet breath. Cole stops short of the stones. Who are you calling? He asks. A promise, she says. Rope slides over the pulley with a dry whisper. Memory flickers, quick and mean. His hands teaching hers. The night they counted fence. The laugh he saved for her alone. She lowers the letter and watches ripples form where she cannot see. Cole glances toward the window where the badge hangs beneath the clock. Say the word, he murmurs. I'll pull with you. Not yet, she says. The rope feeds through her fingers, damp with old cold. She lowers the letter until the knot kisses water and she feels the bite. She counts to 10, steady as a prayer she never learned to love. The circle breathes. The past opens its mouth and does not speak. She waits until the ache in her shoulders draws a line she can live with. Then she pulls. The cord comes up slick, then wet, then shining. She likes the drag because it tells the truth. The letter rises, with its edges bleeding, and her knot holds while the ink tries to run. You trust water more than people, he says. Water doesn't lie. It just drowns, she says. She turns the letter over in her hands. The words waver. Some blur into shapes that still mean what they need to mean. Faces look up from the dark with the water, the living and the owed, the ones with hands and the ones with names. What's in it? He asks. Quiet. Names, she says. And where the rope went before the word accident learned to walk. He does not ask to read. When you're ready, he says. Not before. She folds the page against her palm to flatten it. Ink prints her skin like a line that wants to be counted. If I say the word, she asks, will you pull until your hands bleed? I will count until the numbers say stop, he says. And I will stand where men told me to move. Good, she says, because they will come to make me choose a door that isn't mine. Then we nail your name to yours, he says, and we nail it twice. She nods, small and sharp. What do you call this? He asks. A debt paid forward, she says, and a warning. Who sees it? Only those who listen. She pulls the letter up once more. Water slips away, leaves damp truths behind. The edges sag but hold. Names blur to the right amount of blur. She brings it close to her chest and breathes with it until the shake leaves her fingers. Cole steps near, shadow mixing with hers. "You've done?" he asks. "For now," she says. "Work then," he says. "Work," she answers. She unties the knot and folds the soaked paper twice, careful, then slips it back into the seam pocket at her ribs where the wet can cool and keep. Cole offers the cord. She takes it and hangs it on the iron hook. "You saw the faces," he says. "I saw what owes," she says, "and what won't pay. They will try to laugh this off," he says. "Let them try. They will bring paper by dusk." "Paper doesn't blow uphill," she says. He almost smiles. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true," she says. "Truth sits heavy. You think the well keeps secrets?" He asks. "I think it remembers," she says. "Like the house does, like the road. They don't tell, they store." He nods. "Then we keep our own count and meet the water halfway." "We meet the water," she says, "but we don't fall in." He offers his other hand, not for the rope, but for the weight she won't name. She doesn't take it, not yet. She looks into the circle. It looks back, patient. "When they come with paper, I'll come with this," she says, touching her ribs. "And with hours worked that no one can steal. Cash and posts," he says. "Cash and posts," she says. He studies the yard. "South Culvert, at sunup." "Sunup," she says. He glances toward the road. "If he were here," he says, "careful, what would he ask?" "He'd ask if your hands are clean," she says. "They aren't," he says. "Good," she says. "Then you know what dirt weighs." He nods once. "What do I do with the bread left by the gate?" he asks. "Wait," she says, "and don't bless it." He opens his hand again, offering it plain. She reaches without thinking, meaning to take the cord and hang it back on the nail, meaning to finish the thing and go inside. Her thumb is inkwit and dark from the letter. When her skin meets his, the smear runs across the ridge of his palm in a crooked line. He does not flinch. He doesn't wipe it. He lets the mark rest there like a quiet agreement between water and work. The well breathes. The yard keeps still. The past keeps its mouth open, and for the first time she doesn't look away. Cut on her thumb, smearing ink across his offered hand. Her thumb is still inked from the letter. A dark line across the pad like a path she refuses to wash away. Dusk leans over the yard and slides along the fence toward the low hill where the battered patrol truck sits nose to the town. She and Cole walk without speaking. The cord she used at the well burns a ghost ring into her fingers. Women step out from sheds and the edge of scrub. They do not crowd. They arrive like weather. Sure. A tin pail passes from hand to hand, soft weight inside. The truck's antenna points at the sky as if asking a question and forgetting it. Cole counts the faces, then the road. She counts her breath. She keeps the letter warm against her ribs and lets the hill hold the rest. Someone clears a throat. Someone else mutters a name they will not say aloud. She feels the town listening from the houses below. The first woman lifts up yellow scarf from the pail and rubs it between finger and thumb like testing a coin. "For my sister," she says. The second woman knots a blue strip to the antenna, swift and clean. "For my daughter," she says. The woman steps forward and takes a red scarf. The cloth is rough from many washings. She ties it low, where a hand can find it in the dark. "For myself," she says. Cole watches the hilltop and the road and the tree line. His jaw sits easy. "You started something," he says. "No," she says. "I named it." He tips his hat like he accepts the correction. The wind lifts the new colors. The truck ticks as its engine cools. A baby whimpers and then sleeps again in a shawl. Girls stand by the ditch and read each, not like a simple letter. The hill gathers more women. Old backs straight, young hands quick. Someone ties white for a missing boy, someone green for a field sold twice. The woman keeps her eyes on the metal. The town holds its breath. Headlights climb from the road below and smear across the stones. Doors shut, boots rise. The sheriff steps into the glow with his jaw tight. The brother-in-law crowds his shoulder. Two deputies hang back. He studies the antenna and the colors he never logged. Who put rags on my law? He says. The wind moves, the scarves in a dry hush. It's our law too, she says. This is foolish, the brother-in-law says. A dozen voices answer, flat and hard. So is starving a widow. Cole shifts one step to her side. You started something, he says. No, she says. I named it. The sheriff sets his hand on the antenna. The metal sings. He reaches for the red scarf and pauses like it might burn. The deputies shift. The brother-in-law juts his chin. Take them down, the sheriff says. No, she says. Stand aside, he tells Cole. No, Cole says. You don't claim my truck, the sheriff says. We claim what you forgot, she says. You keep peace by making a mess. Peace was messy before we spoke. I keep a ledger, he says. Your ledger ended thicker lives, she says. These are pages you never opened. Cole nods at the knots. Each one is a count, he says. The sheriff wipes his palm on his pants, pulls his thin book, writes her name, and draws a careful line under it. She feels the line and does not bend. She looks at the scarves until the line loses shape. The brother-in-law tilts his head. Your man ran, he says. You hang cloth because you can't hang truth. She stands between his grin and the pole. I hang truth because you won't carry it, she says. You owe rent, he says. I paid with my bones, she says. The sheriff tries a calmer tone. Move this to the square, he says. Not on a patrol. The square has a stage you own, she says. Up here, the wind owns the floor. I'll write you up, he says. Write me down, she says. You already did. He glances at Cole. Ranchers come and go. Not this one, Cole says. An old woman ties black near the top and watches the sheriff until he studies his boots. A girl knots brown with hands that learned to sew before they learned to trust. The colors breathe. The women breathe with them. The sheriff's jaw loosens a notch. Keep your flags, he says, like the word cuts. Keep them off the road. They already are, she says. They are in your way only if you forget them. He nods once. He looks at her thumb and sees ink. He reaches toward the red scarf and stops. Blessings taste better shared, he mutters before he can catch it. So does power, she says. Engines tick. The hill holds still. One by one, the women finish their knots and step back. The sheriff closes his book and turns down slope. The brother-in-law spits dust and follows. The deputies go last, eyes on the colors. The town hushes like it's listening through the dark. On the hill, the scarves whisper against the antenna, flags for hard truths. The air learns a witness. She keeps her inked thumb and the letter warm at her ribs. Cole stands beside her and doesn't speak. The wind writes the last line none of them can erase. Now cut on the scarves, whispering against the antenna. The scarves whisper against the sheriff's antenna long after the trucks leave the hill. Etta keeps her inked thumb and the letter against her ribs. The sheriff lifts his radio, jaw tight. We got outside agitation, he says. Static spits, then a distant voice answers. We'll send someone. Cole studies the crowd, ledger under his arm. My payroll's public, he says. Who else will open theirs? The brother-in-law says, we're private people. Etta says. Hiding isn't privacy. Mind your place, he says. I just found it, she says. The sheriff steps toward Cole. You're trying to light a fire. Light doesn't need trying, Cole says. It needs room. Engines crest the grade. A bus sighs and stops by the gravel cut. An envoy steps down with mirrored glasses. He scans the antenna and the faces. I'm here to observe, he says. I'm here to listen. The sheriff moves quick. Sir, we have outside agitation. I heard, the envoy says. He faces the hill. Who's in charge? Voices point everywhere. Etta says, no one owns this. Cole raises his book. Start with mine, he says. Payroll, hours, names. Cash paid at sundown. The brother-in-law tries a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. We don't parade our business, Cole says. You already parade your trucks. Etta steps between them. Open the family ledgers. The brother-in-law says, you don't order us. Truth does, she says. The envoy watches, pen ready. Who's the widow? He asks. I have a name, she says. Cole says, say it. She says, Etta. The envoy writes it. The pen shakes once and steadies. He nods. Etta, he repeats. He turns to the sheriff. We'll gather statements, audit ledgers, and pull land files. We run our own records, the brother-in-law says. You run them for yourselves, Etta says. The sheriff clears his throat. We can handle this local. You logged her husband as accident before a body, Cole says. Unfortunate, the sheriff says. Convenient, Etta says. The envoy lifts a palm. No arrests tonight. No property moves. Order first, Etta says. Order without truth is a trick. He writes that too. Men look away. A woman ties another scarf, pale green, near the top. The envoy asks, who hung the first? Etta says, she did. For her sister. Another voice, for my daughter. Etta touches the red knot. For myself. Leave them up, the envoy says. Their witness. The sheriff's jaw works. Those are rags on a patrol. Those are stories you refuse to log, Etta says. The envoy faces the crowd. If you're owed wages or paid under the table, bring proof to the hall at sunup. I will be there. The sheriff will be there. The sheriff's. You don't set my hours. Then meet them because it's right, the envoy says. No one will show, the brother-in-law says. I will, Cole says. Dock me if my count lies. Open it here, the envoy says. Cole flips pages under the bus light. Marta, 8 hours ditch, 20 and 2. Seth posts, 9 hours 27. A teen steps forward with a crumpled stub. Shorted, he says. Cole checks and nods. Mill boss, the boy says. The envoy sleeves the paper. Bring him at sunup, he tells a deputy. The sheriff bristles. You don't command my men. Then ask them, the envoy says. The deputy looks at the scarves and nods. Phones start to ring down in town. Etta pictures ledgers dragged from shelves, dust wiped in a hurry. She lifts her voice so it carries. I will open my door at sunup. I will read what I sign. I will work for a fair wage. I will not move, Cole says. I back that. The envoy says, noted. The brother-in-law mutters. She's playing queen. Etta says, I'm playing alive. The sheriff lowers his radio. Governor's office wants quiet, he says. Then earn it, Etta says. Static cracks again. The far voice returns. Confirm envoy on scene. Confirmed, the sheriff says. Report names, the voice says. The envoy looks at Etta. May I? She nods. He repeats, Etta. He adds, Cole. Others follow. The pen moves. Badge number, the envoy says. The sheriff stares back. The hill waits. The scarves whisper against the metal. The sheriff finally speaks a number. The envoy writes each digit slow, the pen hovering once like ink might choose another path. He closes the pad. Tomorrow, he says. Bring everything you claim. Cole lifts his ledger high. This is me, he says. Names, hours, cash. It's open. Etta looks at the women. Keep the scarves up, she says. If one falls, hang two, the sheriff says. You're making a mess of peace, Etta says. Peace without proof is a story you tell yourselves. The brother-in-law steps close. You think the governor cares? He will, if you keep talking loud, she says. The envoy pockets his pen. Sun up at the hall, he says. Audits start. Doors stay open. Bring a locksmith, Etta says. Some doors stick. He allows a thin smile. We'll oil the hinges. Cole tips his hat. Sun up, he tells Etta. Sun up, she answers. The bus idles. Patrol lights wash the hill. Families drift off. Etta breathes and it does not catch. The envoy lingers by the truck and rests his pad against the fender. The pen hovers again over the line for the sheriff's badge number, then settles and writes it clean. The pen still hovers in her head. The envoy's neat point paused over the sheriff's badge number like ink might decide to refuse him. Morning turns to noon and then to the flat light of late day. Audits start. Men cough. Women name what was taken and when. Etta keeps the letter warm against her ribs and the ink on her thumb. Cole opens his ledger on the hall steps and reads names with cash beside them so no one can pretend not to hear. The envoy listens and writes until the page edges curl. When the room grows mean with whispers, Etta steps outside and follows the fence line. Cole falls in beside her without talking. The envoy comes after with a deputy and a small canvas bag. The town's noise stays behind like a dog on a chain. They go where the wire sags near the ditch. The wind flattens and then stays still, like it means to listen. Two low mounds lie close enough to be a single breath held too long. The women gather without calling. Scarves flash and then settle. The envoy marks a rough map, shoes at the posts, pencil to paper. Cole brings a flat bar and a shovel, but he holds them quiet. Etta kneels. She brushes dirt from a small wooden cross that has been hiding under thorn and broken glass. Lark, she says. Cole leans. Who? She worked our fields. She was 14, Etta says, and the number sits like a stone in her mouth. The envoy looks down at his pad. No official report. That's the problem, Etta says. She remembers the girl's laugh in the rose, a laugh that broke faster than clouds. She remembers a night the trucks ran too slow and too loud. She remembers boots around the well and a rope that knew too much. She keeps brushing until the wood shows itself plain. The cross wasn't planted. It was pressed flat and left to hide. She sets it upright in the soil and feels the ground hold. Cole breathes out. The envoy writes the name like it might walk away if he doesn't tie it to the page. Boots scuff. The brother-in-law arrives with the father, a half step behind. Two men who worked for them try to look like they were always there. The brother-in-law looks at the circle and shows his teeth. Old tragedies don't feed new mouths, he says. Etta doesn't stand. They keep us starving, she says. He snorts. Stories don't mend fence. Cole answers. Truth tightens wire. The sheriff rides up late and ties off like the horse needs help to remember who owns it. He steps down heavy. Enough digging, he says. Cole plants the bar point down in the dirt. Not until the dead lie honest. Etta moves to the first mound and peels back damp earth with both hands. A crude pine box shows, strings still wound where a hinge should live. She clears the edges and leaves it shut. She slides to the second mound and finds fabric, worn 2 threads, and then a plank half its size. The envoy notes distance, draws fence angles, and turns to the sheriff. You logged a fall from a truck last winter. This line here. The sheriff looks past them. Accident. Convenient, Etta says. He writes her tone down, his jaw, and calls it calm. Back away, he says. We'll secure the site. We'll do it proper. Proper is late. Etta says. Cole stands between her and the men like a post you didn't see until you hit it. We'll bring the coroner, he says. The envoy nods. Already called. The brother-in-law spreads his arms. You can't dig bodies out of land you don't own. The dead don't belong to you, Etta says. Everything this side of fence belongs to us, he says. Even what you hid, she asks. His grin slips and finds itself again. The sheriff lifts his thin book and his pencil. You want citations? Cole tilts his head. Write hours owed while you're at it. Women laugh once, low and fast, the kind that salts a room. The envoy kneels but does not crowd her. May I record the name? Lark, she says. He writes it slow so his hand won't pretend it forgot. He looks at the smaller eyes. And here? Etta shakes her head. Not yet, the sheriff asks. What does that change? Etta stands. Everything that comes next, she says. The brother-in-law mutters. You still owe rent. I paid with my bones, she says. Cole's voice stays even. If you charge her, you charge me. I'm standing where she stands, the father says. Ranchers come and go. Not this one, Cole says. A woman from the outskirts steps through with care. A small ring box balanced in her palm. Found by the ditch 2 springs ago, she says. No one claimed. She gives it to Etta. The hinge is stubborn, then gives. The inside is empty. Air sits where a life should, small and loud. Etta closes it. The click lands like proof. She carries it to the first mound, sets it on the soil, pulls it back, then sets it again, and leaves it there. The sheriff stiffens. Stop making a shrine. Start making a record, she says. The envoy lifts the camera from his bag and clicks twice. Then writes the time in longhand, because not everything belongs in a machine that can forget you. He faces the deputies. Tape it off. No one crosses without my say. One deputy nods and starts. The sheriff watches the tape stretch and finds no words that don't come back at him. Etta kneels again and presses her hand to the soil. Lark, she says. Cole lowers his hat. Women answer, one by one, until the name holds in the air like a post set deep. Wind hardens, then stops. A truck on the road coughs and dies, and then starts again. The fence to the east creaks, as if it knows it's being watched. The envoy checks his pad and glances at the sheriff. Your badge number, he says. The sheriff gives it, each digit slow, jaw tight. The envoy writes and underlines. He looks at the brother-in-law. Family ledgers, by dusk. We're private people, the man says. Etta says. Hiding isn't privacy. Cole eases the flat bar into the ground to test the earth's edge and then leaves it standing. We'll wait for the coroner, he says. The sheriff says, you'll wait where I tell you. Etta looks up at him, steady. I'll wait with her, she says, hand on the mound, and with every girl you miswrote. The father pulls the hat from his head and seems to forget where his hands belong. Old ground should rest, he says. It will, Etta says, when the names do. She takes the ring box again and studies the scar inside where a band once lived. She traces it, then closes the lid against her thumb and feels the small bite. She sets the box on the mound and leaves her hand a second longer than needed. Cole looks to her. You want me to say it? Say it, she says. He says Lark. The girl from the mill says it after him. The women say it until the word stops shaking. The envoy pockets his pad. The deputy runs the tape low so the women do not have to bow to pass. The sheriff looks at the tape, then at the box, then at the dirt. He reaches to lift his radio and then doesn't. The brother-in-law spits into scrub and turns toward the trucks. The father follows. Hetlo. Etta stays. She presses her palm to the mound and feels only earth and her own blood moving. She looks at the smaller eyes and knows another name waits like a splinter under skin. Not today. Today, this one gets breath. She stands and wipes her hands on her dress and lets the stain hold. The envoy says, "We'll keep guard." Cole says, "I'll sit the first hour." Etta nods. "I'll sit the second." She takes one step back and lets the wind return. The ring box sits where she left it. The lid quivers in the first thin push of evening air. Cut on the box lid, quivering in the wind. The ring box lid quivers in the wind and then settles like it heard its name. Etta holds her breath, lets it go, and walks with the box to the barn where the envoy has made a courtroom out of scraps and heat. Benches crowd the dirt floor. Women sit forward. Men lean and wait to see which way the weight tips. Cole rests his ledger on a barrel and nods to her. The sheriff stands near the door with his jaw tight, thumb on the radio he keeps touching like a habit he can't defend. The envoy lifts his pad, slides his glasses down, and looks at the family books stacked on a table made of 2 doors. He says, "Where's the deed?" The in-law answers without blinking. "Misplaced." Cole says it's soft, like he's naming weather, pattern. The sheriff turns his head. "Mind your tongue, rancher." Etta feels the letter warm against her ribs and the ink dry on her thumb. "Mind your pen," she says, and the room quiets to hear what silence means. The envoy points to the ledgers again. "Bring them." The father moves slow, carries the books like they weigh more than paper ever should, sets them down, and steps back as if they might bite. The envoy opens the top volume and flips to a page where numbers smear at the edges. He taps the margin. This is neat until the month the fence fell. Then it wanders. He looks at Etta. She nods. Then he asks the room for names owed and hours missing. Voices rise. A girl from the cannery says her supervisor kept pay stubs in a drawer and locked them when the sheriff's truck rolled by. A man from the mill says his overtime vanished when votes were counted. Cole lifts his ledger and reads loud so even the boards can hear. Marta, ditch 8 hours, 20 and 2, paid at sundown. Seth, posts 9 hours, 27, paid at sundown. He turns the pages and shows his count, not his pride. The envoy checks the sums, marks them, and then points at the family books again. "Where's the deed?" "Misplaced," the in-law replies, but his eyes slide to the side, like a gate that learned to stick. "Pattern," Cole says again. The sheriff lifts his chin and tries a smile. "We run order here." Etta steps closer to the table. She takes the coil lamp from its hook and turns the dry knob. She strikes the match. The wick coughs and catches and throws a hard, honest light. Shadows rise up the boards and climb the rafters like names being called from places the door forgot. She sets the lamp by the books and opens her dress seam pocket. She draws the wet letter out and holds it near the glow without letting it burn. Words wrinkle but hold. She reads to the barn. "If I don't return, they did this." The envoy looks up from his pad. "Whose ink?" "My husband's," she says. Cole does not move. The sheriff shifts his boots. The in-law mutters that grief turns to lies when bills come due. Etta folds the page so the line stays visible, lays it by the lamp, and keeps her hand on the table so the shake stays in her bones and not in her mouth. The envoy's pen scratches. He says again, "Where's the deed?" "Misplaced," the in-law says, slower than before. "Pattern," Cole says, almost gentle, because he knows how long a habit takes to break. The sheriff touches his radio and then drops his hand. Etta looks at him. "Mind your pen," she repeats, and the envoy writes that down too. He faces the family. "Open your crate." The father pretends not to hear. The envoy nods to a deputy. The deputy rolls a small trunk forward. The lock shows where one key lived too long. The father fishes that key from his pocket like it hurts. He turns it and lifts the lid. Inside, a stamp, envelopes, and a ledger thinner than memory. The envoy opens it and finds a gap the size of a season. He marks the gap. He slides the stamp aside and finds a folded receipt for cattle sold without names. He marks that too. Cold to the gathering, steady as a post. My payroll's public. Who else will open theirs? The brother-in-law lifts his chin. We're private people. Etta says what she learned at the well. Hiding isn't privacy. The envoy hears it, nods once, and turns a page where rent rises when wells run dry. He draws a line. He looks to the sheriff. Statement. The sheriff scratches his neck and tries to slow the room. We need calm. We need time. The envoy answers without heat. .com follows count. Time belongs to the ode. He points to the letter. Log it. The sheriff takes out his thin book like a man giving up a habit, writes the sentence, and draws a line under her name as if a line could hold her there. Etta moves the lamp a finger closer so the light kisses every margin. The barn breathes. She hears the women breathing with it. She hears the men who work for the family forgetting how to lean. She says to the envoy, count every story you buried. Cole answers without waiting, we'll dig. The envoy holds up a hand, and the room stops like a team that trusts the driver. He looks at the door, then at the lamp, then at the open books that want to close. He sets his pen against the paper so the point won't wander. Start reading, he says. The lamp burns steady while the books wait. The envoy's pen hovers. Start reading, he says. The old patriarch steps in with his hat in both hands. Shut this down. We're past that, the envoy says. Etta stays by the lamp. Cole stands between the table and the sheriff. You forget who built this town, the father says. You forget who broke it, Etta says. We took you in and fed you, he says. I was tallied. Every bite had a price, she says. He turns to the envoy. Outsiders stirred this dust. Dust hides numbers. We're here for the count, the envoy says. Cole lifts his ledger. Name a page. Mind your tongue, rancher, the father says. Mind your pen, Etta tells the sheriff. The envoy opens a family book. Where's the deed? Misplaced, the father says. Pattern, Cole says. The father points at the doorway. Boy, she made you small. The son steps from shadow. Eyes on Etta. I was told to keep you safe. Then stop keeping me, Etta says. The sheriff edges toward the lamp. Cole blocks him without touching. Just keeping peace, the sheriff says. Light is peace, Cole says. The envoy nods at a chest. Open it. The son lifts keys from his belt and works the lock. The lid lifts. Receipts, stamps, envelopes, a thin ledger that doesn't like being seen. Etta draws the wet letter from her dress seam and lays it by the lamp. She opens it. If I don't return, they did this. Whose ink? The envoy asks. My husband's, she says. Grief makes lies, the father says. Hiding does, Etta says. Where's the deed? The envoy asks again. Misplaced, the father says. Pattern, Cole says again. You'll die poor if you follow her, the father tells the room. I'll live counted, Etta says. He faces the sun. Stand with blood. The son looks at the lamp until it steadies. I was told to keep her safe, he says again. You can't keep what isn't yours, Etta says. You were promised, the father says. I was traded, she says. We fed you, he says. You priced every bite, she says. You owe us, he says. Give me my deed, she says. Read the envoy, tells Cole. Cole reads Marta. Ditch, 8 hours, 20 and 2. Seth posts, 9 hours, 27. The envoy points at a rent line. Who raised this when the well ran dry? Clerks, the father says. Etta taps a mark. The sheriff signed. Paper blows, the sheriff says. Paper doesn't blow uphill, Etta says. The father lifts his hat. This is what outsiders bring. Audits, division, shame. Etta turns the letter so the black line can be seen. He knew your house, she says. He looks at the son. Stand with us. The son nods once, then shakes his head. I was told to keep her safe. I can't keep what you try to own. The sheriff glances at the lamp. Cole's shoulder says no. Where's the deed? The envoy says a third time. The father says nothing. The son takes the hat from his father's hands and holds it low, like weight. You'll die poor, the father says. Maybe I'll live honest, the son says. Record that, the envoy says. The father jabs a finger. Fence and vote. I owe you nothing you stole first, Etta says. We kept this town working, he says. You kept it quiet, she says. Cole reads more lines. Hours balanced. Cash at sundown. Law is order, the sheriff says. Order is count, Etta says. The envoy turns a page. This line moves when elections do. Clerks, the father says. Pattern, Cole says. The son sets his hand near Etta's letter. Father, give her the deed. You don't tell me, the father says. Then hear me, the son says to the room. I'm done taking orders that starve my life. Etta says, say what you choose. He meets her eyes. I choose her right to stand. I choose a wage not tied to a leash. I choose not to carry what you hide. We can end this civil, the sheriff says. Count first, the envoy says. The father leans in. You think the governor cares? He will when your books read out loud, Etta says. They already are, Cole says. Badge number, the envoy says. The sheriff says it slow. The envoy writes every digit. Etta lifts her chin. Give me my deed. You will die poor, the father says. Maybe I'll live honest, the son says again. The sheriff edges toward the lamp. Cole moves, and habit stops. Sheriff, stay clear of the light, the envoy says. Yes, sir, the sheriff answers. The son looks at Etta, then at the hat, heavy in his hands. I was born into a door that swung one way, he says. Make another door, she says. He lowers the hat until his arms shake. The father reaches, but the son is faster. I choose, the son says. Choose what? The father asks. Her right to stand. My right to walk. He opens his hands. The hat drops. Etta feels the floor steady. Cole closes his ledger and waits for a deed that will have to appear, because the room has run out of places to hide it. The father stands with empty hands, and a mouth that can't decide. Read on, the envoy says. Dust hangs where the hat hit the floor, and lifts again as boots shift. The lamp throws hard light across the barn, across books opened like wounds. The envoy raises his pad. Name the dead, he says. A woman near the back answers first, voice small and sure. Mara. Another steps up with a hand on a girl's shoulder. June. Etta keeps her palm on the table and nods toward the hill she cannot see. Lark. The word lands and stays. The room exhales. This is theater, the sheriff says. Etta doesn't look at him. Then watch. Cole opens his ledger so there's no corner for doubt. Marta Ditch, 8 hours, 20 and 2. Seth posts, 9 hours, 27. Jory, fence mend, 6 hours, 18. He flips. Mill shift, 3 nights. Overtime cut. Cannery line. Pay held when patrol lights passed. The gaps make a sound the room can hear. The envoy marks each hole with a square and writes ode beside it. A deputy chalks totals on the door until the white climbs like morning. The brother-in-law edges forward. You can't prove intent. Etta glances at the broken bread someone set by the door like witness. You proved it with hunger. He sneers. You want to try me in a barn? We're not trying you, Cole says. We're counting. The envoy lifts his pen and waits like patience could make truth walk. Where are the slips? He asks. The father nods to a crate. 2 deputies bring it to the table. Stamps, envelopes, a private book, the color of old teeth. The son unlocks it and sets it down. I'll need to confer with county, the sheriff says. You'll need to listen, the envoy says. Seize records. The brother-in-law barks. You got no warrant. Directive. The envoy says, not louder, just truer. The deputy counts envelopes and seals. Cole turns a page. Carla, pickups, 4 hours unpaid. Nora, voting day, shift cut. Abel, posts, 12 hours. 36 men from the far fields nod and speak with their chins because their mouths forgot permission. Badge number, the envoy says, without looking up. The sheriff gives it. The envoy writes every digit and draws a tight line under it. Women step up and set small things by the lamp. A button, a cracked comb, a ribbon faded to memory, a nail pulled from a gate. Each speaks a line. Mara, June, Lark. Etta hears the well breathe in her head and keep its counsel. She looks at the chalked totals and at the thin book that always wrote her small. Say what's owed out loud, she tells Cole. He does. The deputy repeats. The envoy signs next to both. Shame changes shape. Fear finds new owners. The father sags a notch. The son watches the pen and does not blink. Next sheet, the envoy says. Cole reads a week where pay vanished when posters went up about a vote. A woman points at the total. People don't eat posters, Etta says, or promises. The envoy notes both. The brother-in-law blurts, she was paid. Etta lifts her chin, with bruises and sleep. The room holds still like a mouth that won't swallow another lie. The envoy opens the private book and finds lines paid in favors instead of cash. He reads them flat, so the words carry weight, not heat. The father's eyes go to the floor. The son says, Father, the deed. The father says nothing. A boy from the mill steps forward with a stub. Shorted. Cole checks and nods. By who, mill boss? Bring him at dawn, the envoy says. Another man points at a margin where numbers jump. That's when trucks took water, Etta says, and votes. The envoy writes both. Count the cattle slips, he tells a deputy. Brands and dates fill the air. Paid, unpaid, missing, Cole says. Etta points at a sale stamped with the sheriff's name. You signed this. He says, unfortunate. She says, convenient. The envoy holds out his hand. The sheriff gives the rubber seal like it burns. Etta draws the wet letter from her dress seam and lays it on the open book so ink and ledger share one frame. If I don't return, they did this, she reads. Steady now. Whose ink? The envoy asks. My husband's, she says. Cole sets his hand near hers, not touching. The lamp throws the words onto the wood and lets everyone see the warp and still believe the meaning. The brother-in-law tries again. You can't prove intent. You proved it with hunger, Etta repeats, and the line no longer shakes. Order remains, the envoy says. Doors stay open. No one moves paper. The sheriff shifts closer to the lamp. Cole steps in front. The barn goes quiet enough to hear the wick hiss. Outside, wind changes on the hill and runs along the fence. Inside, chalk dries to a list that won't take water. The envoy points to the door. Post these totals where morning can see. The deputy goes. The father finds no words and looks smaller without his hat. The son says, Father, the deed, again, and this time it isn't pleading. It is a line. Name the dead, the envoy says once more. Women answer in order, like bells. Mara, June, Lark. The envoy marks the page and closes the private book with care, as if even a lie can break and cut a hand. Seize records, he says. The crate takes a seal. The deputy writes time on the tape and signs. Cole sets his ledger beside the pile. Take mine too, he says. It stands. Etta looks at the door and at the chalk that shines white like dawn. Say the names, she says again, and they do, softer now. But firm. The brother-in-law mutters. Governor will tire of this, then let him count, Etta says. The envoy pockets his pen and lifts his chin. This barn is a drum, he says. Each fact a strike. Cole nods and reads one last line. Back hours, 4. Back pay, 12. The deputy repeats, and the chalkboard takes it in. Silence follows, heavy but clean. The sheriff breathes and looks at the badge on his chest, then at the gun on his hip. His hand rises halfway and hangs there in the heat, hovering between badge and gun, choosing neither. Etta watches the sheriff's hand hover and fall empty. The lamp holds steady. Outside, scarves whisper on the patrol antenna. The radio at his hip crackles, then quits. Etta closes the ring box, hears a click like a door she won't enter, carries it to the tin tub, and sets it down. She faces the room. I am not for sale. Neither am I, the son says. He faces his father. I'm done. The father reaches for the hat that isn't there. The sheriff clears his throat. What do you want? Account, Etta says, of every story you buried. Cole sets a hand near the lamp. We'll dig. Women rise and walk to the hill. Knots come loose. Scarves go higher. Etta holds by the tub. The sheriff eyes the lamp. Cole shifts. Easy. There's ways to keep peace. The sheriff says. Count is 1. Etta says. Threat is not. You'll die poor, the father mutters. The son meets his eyes. Maybe I'll live honest. Applause. Widow, the brother-in-law says. I want paper, Etta says. Not applause. The deputy opens a crate. Stamps, envelopes, a ledger the color of old teeth, a cloth packet with blank deeds and one rubbed thin. He keeps this in a drawer, the son says. The father's jaw tightens. Family business. Town business, Etta says. The envoy lifts the rubbed deed to the lamp. Ink ghosts. A date shoved backward. The radio cracks. A far voice says, hold. The sheriff doesn't answer. Etta touches the ring box, then leaves it on the tub. Old contracts end slow, she says. She looks at the son. You were told to keep me safe. Stop keeping me. He nods like a man stepping off the wrong porch. I hear you. He turns to the father. I won't carry what you hide. You bring ruin, the father says. I bring daylight, she says. Cole tips his hat. Soon up, we set posts. Sun up we read names. Now we witness, the envoy says. They spill to the yard. The dead pear tree marks the well. Etta ties the damp letter, neat knot, sure hands, and lowers it into black until rope talks across stone. This isn't ceremony, the brother-in-law says. It's foolish. It's choice, Etta says. Mine, she listens. You still there? The well answers with breath. Who are you calling? The sheriff asks. A promise, she says. Cole stands loose. Women take places by the stones. The son holds the space between old and new. The father lingers where light won't go. Etta stops the rope with 2 fingers, then pulls. The knot rises wet and shining. Water runs down her wrist. She opens the letter in lamplight. Edges warp, words hold. If I don't return, they did this, she reads. The envoy steps close. You stand by it. I stand by it, she says. And by me. The radio cracks. Status, a far voice asks. The sheriff thumbs the switch, then lets it fall. Quiet holds. What do you want? He asks again. Truth, Etta says. And the deed. Bring it, the envoy says. The son moves first. He lifts the rubbed paper and places it in the envoy's hand, not the father's. Boy, the father hisses. The word has nowhere to land. Read it, Cole says. The envoy reads names and dates. This returns to Etta. You can't prove intent, the brother-in-law says. You proved it with hunger, Etta says. Women answer with a low sound that isn't threat. It is witness. Scarves slap and whisper. The father turns to the son. You walk out of blood. I walk out of your shadow, the son says. I kept peace, the sheriff says. You kept quiet, Etta says. You logged accident? You stood where numbers vanished. He rubs his badge until it won't shine. What do you want from me? Count, she says. Stand while we do it. He stands. The envoy says, we count, and we dig. Cole says, women retie the highest scarves tighter. Etta returns to the tub, lifts the ring box, and places it open on the rim. I am not for sale, she says again. Neither am I, the son says. He faces his father. I'm done. You'll tear this town, the sheriff said. We already lived torn, Etta says. We're sewing stitches at sunup, Cole says. The envoy lifts his radio and speaks like a prayer that can be checked. Hall. Morning. Doors open. Ledgers open. Wages posted. He looks at Etta. Anything else? She looks at the women, at the unborn not yet named, at the quiet that won't be quiet again. Yes, she says. If a scarf falls, hang two. If a story shakes, say it again. If a man says peace while stealing, take the paper from his hands. We will, Cole says. I will, the son says. The father says nothing. The sheriff breathes and reaches for nothing. Etta returns to the well. She lowers the letter, stops it, then pulls it back by her choice, not the town's. She holds it at the mouth and turns it so lamplight catches. Water shines over the edge, a bright rim that proves the pull and the hold. She tucks the page to her ribs and keeps the cord in her hand. The radio hisses under a sky of scarves. The count waits for morning. The vows already live now. Morning arrives without permission. Etta stands on the porch with the wet letter in her hand and the cord loose around her wrist. Scarves are folded into pockets now, but color lingers on the women's faces. The barn door yawns. The envoy waits with his pad and the seized books. Cole leans by a post, hat-low ledger under his arm. The sheriff comes in quiet, badge dim. The father follows with the son a step behind, eyes steady in a way they weren't yesterday. This goes to court, the envoy says. The sheriff nods. It should. Etta sets the letter by the lamp. The words hold. The envoy slides a form across. Sign what you claimed. The father looks for another door in the window and finds none. He signs because the count already closed the others. He sets the pen down like it weighs more than metal. I thought I owned hunger. Etta meets him. Hunger owned you. The envoy stamps, tears a copy, and hands it to her. The deed answers with her name where it should have always lived. She keeps it without looking away. Cole's voice stays even. My promise stands. She nods. I'll protect myself. Ride with me anyway. He tips his hat once. The son clears his throat. I'll mend the fence we broke. The father has no order left to give. The brother-in-law mutters. Pride won't feed this town. Etta doesn't turn. Hunger won't run it anymore. Women move through the barn in pairs. Scarves vanish into aprons. A girl wipes the chalkboard and writes a fresh total beside the old pate. An elder counts envelopes and ties them with the same knot Etta uses at the well. The envoy signs every line. The deputies seal the crate and carry it through a door that used to shut on them. Outside, air smells of tin and hay and a storm that decided not to break. Cole walks with Etta to the house. The badge on the clock hangs where it always did, but it is only metal now. She finds a frame in the drawer, slides the deed under glass, and wipes the corners with her sleeve. She hangs it above the table and sets the ring box beside it, unopened. The box looks finished. The frame looks like work that will not end. Cole stands at her shoulder, without touching. Looks right, he says. Looks earned, she says. They step back out. Women shoulder tools. A post-hole digger bites where the fence must stand true. The son carries rails. A neighbor hauls wire. The sheriff draws a line on a map and marks the south culvert where the count began. Etta ties the cord to the well ring, lowers the letter, stops it, then pulls it back by will alone and folds it dry at her ribs. We remember, she says. We remember, the women answer. The father lingers by the road with hands empty. Light makes him old. I thought I owned hunger, he says again, quiet as dust. Etta hears him and lets the air answer. She walks past without heat or hurry. The brother-in-law kicks a stone and misses even that. The son sits a rail and looks to her. She nods once and he nods back. The sheriff checks his watch, speaks into the radio without tilt, and tells the hall to open doors and post the totals where morning can see. The envoy climbs into the bus with the sealed crate and a box of copies. He leans out the window. Court will call. Hold your ground. We will, Etta says. Cole adds, we'll be easy to find. We'll be working. The bus coughs and rolls. Hammers take the hour like it belongs to them again. She goes inside to the clock. The badge dims on its nail. She checks the frame. Her name sits sharp as dry ink. The ring box rests closed like a story that does not need opening to be true. She rests her palm on the wood until the room and her breath agree. When she steps out, Cole is at the horses, bridles loose. You said, ride with me anyway, he says. Work first, she says. Then ride. Which way? He asks. Through, she says. They mount and ease along the fence line, at the pace of a count you mean to keep. Women wave and go back to lifting. The sheriff watches from the gate and touches his radio once, not to call but to make sure it stays quiet. The father sits on a stump and studies the way a fence holds, not by threat but by care. The son carries posts toward the ditch and does not look back for orders that won't come. They pass the hill. The antenna is bare, yet wind carries color in the mind. They pass the well. Etta tips her chin toward it. We remember, she says again, softer. We remember, Cole answers. The sky does what it wants. Morning belongs to them. The envoy files charges and the papers begin their slow climb through rooms that once forgot people like her. Women fold scarves into pockets and hold their heads higher than flags. No one asks permission. Etta rides to the house once more and dismounts. She plants the deed under the frame, then lets it be final. She sets the ring box beside it, unopened, like a lock that owns no door. She looks at the well and says, we remember. We remember. The women call from the fence. The badge dims on the nail. The letter dries in the sun. Etta and Cole ride not away, but through the ward work that belongs to them,